comes to self-development, no matter the method you use, the vital point is to practice. If you're ready to transform your life and claim the potential inside of you, you're in the right place. Welcome back to The Vital Point. I'm your host, Jonathan Schecter. I have such a great episode for you here. I'm really excited to be able to share this one. And I actually had recorded another intro previously, actually right after I recorded this conversation with today's guest, Stephen Jaggers. It's been a while. We actually recorded this episode in November. The good news is most of the things that we talk about on this podcast are pretty evergreen. And going back and listening to this podcast to edit it, I listened to it a couple of times, it is just as fresh, just as vibrant, just as relevant and valuable for you to listen to as it was the day that we recorded it. Really, the only difference between now and when Stephen and I recorded it is that we've grown. You know, we're different people a little bit. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to redo the intro, is that one of the first things that he and I talk about when we drop into this conversation is the difference between being productive and being busy. And, you know, that's really what's happened to me since he and I recorded this podcast. I got so busy / productive with the course High on Your Own Supply. Now we're doing the group coaching that's based off of that. And, you know, things that I've had in my personal life, a few really potent breathwork retreats that I've been integrating, some medicine experiences, and, you know, I've taken some more time for myself, and I appreciate your patience with that. So I'm really excited to be getting back to it. And I thought this was a really good sort of bridge episode in my mind between the old and the ideas that I had last year when I was really going hard at recording, and where I'm at now. If you listen to the last episode with East Forest, you know, I mentioned that I dropped the season from the podcast. I'm just going to put out the episodes, which gives me a little bit more flexibility and is just more true to where I am right now and the vision that I have for the show. But the whole last season that we did when we were still doing seasons was all guests that I had met at the MAPS conference. And actually, I also met Stephen at the MAPS conference. It's when we first connected, and, you know, I was like, hey, I've been kind of stalking you on Instagram and would really love to have you on the podcast. So I knew I was going to enjoy the conversation, because, you know, we have a lot in common, breath work and somatics. And I'm just an admirer of Stephen and the work that he's done and the brand that he has built and is continue to build through somatic breathwork. But going back and listening for the editing process, I noticed two things. The first one was just how much I enjoyed the conversation. The other thing that I realized as I was editing, and, you know, just sort of like a gravity or a pull back into podcasting, is I am incredibly fortunate and incredibly grateful to get to talk to some of the people that I've interviewed on the show, and not only to talk to them, but, you know, some of them I've become friends with, and it goes beyond just having these podcast conversations that I get to share with you. And I think that being able to talk to people like Stephen, who I admire and who are doing the things that I want to do and am doing and are a few steps ahead of me, it's really, really inspirational. It's really like inspires me to go and continue to put the work in and to, you know, push and stretch a little bit during these moments where I do feel really productive and, kind of over my threshold, so to speak. It's like, okay, like this is really good. And I really want to put this conversation out into the world. I really want to be able to share it with others. And so, yeah, I left a little bit of the old intro that I recorded that day in, partially because it's still relevant and partially because there was just this sort of afterglow. I was in the moment. There was so much enthusiasm. But from a somatic perspective, wow, I just had so much joy listening back to this interview. I felt so warm. I felt so excited. I got really, really just stoked to share it with you. And I'm just, really pleased about how it came out, how much Stephen and I hit it off, and just felt really grateful. So I know that you're going to enjoy this conversation as well. It's a doozy. Towards the end of the interview, Stephen blessed us with a breathwork practice that you can check out and save so that you can come back and do it whenever you need. And yeah, if you're new to the show, please give us a like and a follow on whatever platform you are listening, or if you're on YouTube, follow the YouTube channel. Now, without further ado, Stephen Jaggers on the Vital Point podcast. My guest today is Stephen Jaggers. He is the founder of Somatic Breathwork, as well as the host of the Mind Body Mentor podcast. Sometimes I meet someone and they're like, so what are you into? And I start telling them about breathwork and meditation and nervous system regulation, somatics. And sometimes they're like looking at you like you're speaking a different language. And then there's folks that you meet where you just feel that connection. It's like talking to someone that's speaking that same language. I feel like the conversation really dived into some of the deep foundational reasons why we connect through the breath and connect into, this deeper level of being more alive and present in the world with ourselves and our relationships. And it was just such a delight. Stephen Jaggers, welcome to the Vital Point podcast. So happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's an honor, Jonathan. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and it's, we've been going back and forth for a while now, but I always feel like the timing is perfect. So yeah, excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Like the timing is perfect. Always really like you said, we've been going back and forth for a while, but I'm happy that it's taken a while only because I know that it's a reflection of your success and like how busy you are. So like I'm really happy for the things that are happening in your world and with somatic release breathwork.
It has been a journey, man. And even when I use that word, or when I say that word, like, hey, I'm really busy, there's something that goes on inside of my own nervous system that it's actually not. It feels a little bit like a cop out in a way. It's more like I'm actually very productive. Maybe that's a better a reframe for that.
Nice.
But yeah, this journey has been, I truly believe that a lot of the things that we teach and we offer are probably the things that we need the most. And as this has grown, there's been aspects of it that have been incredibly dysregulating for my system. The short definition of trauma, if you will, is too much, too fast. Right. And this has grown expansively in 2-3 years. And it's been a lot on my system. So at the same time, it is also an opportunity for growth. And I've developed more capacity, more resilience, more ability to regulate my system under, with a million things going on. So Yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and I'm wondering if you could maybe like expand on what has helped you, because I find myself in my own way in a similar situation. It's been incredibly expansive and, like you're saying, at times incredibly dysregulating, and I
Yeah.
feel like I'm still learning how to navigate that line of self-care within this realm of holding space for other people and helping them with their work. And sometimes, even though it like seems like from one perspective maybe I'm not working as many hours as I was like in the corporate gig, there's a different taxation to my nervous system
Oh yeah.
holding space than it is like working on spreadsheets or, putting the cover on my TPS reports, right?
Absolutely, man. It's an interesting felt sensation to feel so full from the work that I do, but also so empty, meaning that I've just given everything that I have. Right?
Yeah.
There's using that word holding space. I could dive into kind of my definition of it to have kind of an applicable understanding. um, my definition of holding space is having developed the ability to take in the full capacity of whatever's happening in the present moment through witness consciousness, and not being reactively involved but being response able. That's a lot of words that need to be kind of broken down as well. But basically, having developed the ability to have your full presence and attention taking in the moment, and not being like reactive, which basically meaning not being dictated by our triggers, by our responses, by our unconscious, but maintaining this ability to be response able, meaning that I have the ability to respond, which is basically meaning that there's space in between stimulus and response. Like when I'm working with somebody, something's coming up, say they're having an emotional release or something, there's a space in between that I'm not reactive, meaning like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, is something wrong? There's enough space and inner spaciousness within my system to maintain this level of responsibility that I have the ability to respond. So with that all being said, that takes a tremendous amount of energy to maintain this level of presence, to maintain this level of attunement, to maintain this level of like responsibility when we live in a world that where we're so distracted, we have so many things pulling at our attention all the time. It require like maintaining that level of attention and presence is probably can be one of the most taxing things if you haven't trained that capacity within your nervous system. So I watch a lot of practitioners burn themselves out because they're not used to giving that level of presence and attention and empathy to people over and over. It really is a trained muscle that we're not taught in school. We look at it as like a soft skill, but really it's a meta skill that changes, can change your life and actually can change other people. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like the last part especially, right? Because it's like there's something about the way that we show up and we're just present in the work that we're doing that in a
Mm.
way can invite the people we're working with to go a little bit deeper or to open up into their process, right? Like they're connecting with our nervous system in like a real subtle, like kind of maybe unspoken way sometimes.
Yeah, it is that concept of co-regulation.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes from Body Keeps the Score from Bessel van der Kolk is healing happens in the presence of an empathetic witness.
Yeah.
And I do think in a world where we look at self-development and self-growth and all of these sort of, lone wolf type mentalities, healing actually happens in community. in relationship. It happens between you and another person, because most of our wounding happened between us and another person, whether it was our parents or romantic relationships, or, you know, our relationships when we're developing, going through school. And, you know, so really we don't put enough emphasis on healing actually happens in the presence of another person. And that person has this opportunity to be an empathetic witness. And what does that actually mean? Well, we've kind of broken that down with the understanding of co-regulation. And co-regulation is basically how the state of my nervous system is affecting your state of your nervous system, and how we're actually, because our nervous systems, when we're together, we are communicating beyond words. The nervous system's obviously the electrical system of your body. It's the same thing if you look at it from an Eastern standpoint. It's the chakra system. You have nerve bundles on all of those different, 7 main centers that are controlling all the glandular function and all of that. But it basically extends beyond your body, from a more meta perspective, that you're looking at what's called your aura, or your electromagnetic field around you. And so I basically have an electrical bubble around me. You have an electrical bubble around you. When we are together, those are communicating to each other. And those are communicating either a deep layer of safety, a deep layer of like presence and empathy, meaning that I'm feeling you and you're feeling me. And, one of the terms that has been used for this is, you feel seen and heard. We use that term in kind of the development or what spiritual community or psychedelic community or therapy community, people feeling seen and heard. But what is that really? That is the concept of we're co-regulating with another person who's an empathetic witness. And we start to, we have the ability to speak safety into another person's nervous system from that co-regulation. We will start to match somebody. And so if I can maintain this state of regulation, calmness, safety, alignment, and congruence within myself, when another person feels that, they might not feel it in their head, they might not notice it, but their body feels it. And they will match me. They will co-regulate that. And that is what I feel he was trying to say when he's saying healing happens in the presence of an empathetic witness. It really is that process of co-regulation, which we learn co-regulation first as a child before we even learn how to self-regulate ourselves. So there's an aspect of it helping us heal at a core level.
Yeah, I think what also is coming up for me, just based on what you just shared, is it's why it's so important for us to be doing our own work. Absolutely. So that we can show up and be in that co-regulated state. Because, in a perfect world, we're able to, have the perfect set and setting for us to go in and be facilitators, right? But that doesn't always happen. And I would imagine for you, it's a very present, thing that you're working on with so many other, aspects of the business and the expansion going on.
It's been so much, man. And I find so much of, I am a practitioner at heart, like being an entrepreneur, if you will. I don't know if I even resonate with that term necessarily, but a business owner or a founder, those aren't my strong skill sets. Like the practitioner side of things actually help me remember who I am and what I'm actually good at and what I care about most. And like this concept of presence, truly presence is a byproduct of healing a lot of your own stuff and traumas. Because another sort of, I'm full of quotes, but Gabor-Mate, trauma is a disorder of not being able to be in the present moment because the past has frozen into my present moment and starts to create my future. And so for me to be present with somebody without all of these things pulling at me, I have to do that own internal work. And there's this understanding of the concept of after time. One of my other mentors, Thomas Hubel, talks about this, and it really resonates with me. And he says, to be able to be present with somebody means that you have to have integrated your past. Presence is integrated past. And he uses the term called after time to talk about how much past you don't have integrated. And I'll give you an example.
Yeah, I love
Say
this.
if I, like within my partnership, if I got in an argument this morning with her over breakfast, and now I'm doing this podcast, how much of me is still processing what happened earlier? That's called after time. That's how much time it takes me in the present moment to actually digest and integrate what happened this morning. Now, if we don't have ways in which we're digesting the past, and that's not just mental, but it's also on an emotional level, on our body, on a somatic level, then our capacity will be full. And then that creates this aspect of, I'm not able to be present. I might be on my last nerve. That's a term that we use in our culture to speak to a nervous system that doesn't have any capacity. I might be on the verge of having a nervous breakdown, right? These are all speaking to nervous systems that are in this dysregulated state, that are not able to be present, that are full of a lot of these activated defense systems that get left turned on, our fight, flight, freeze, that's just activated all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, the things that are just sitting in the body waiting for that activation,
Right.
and coming alive. Yeah, what are some of the things that you're doing for yourself to lessen that time of after time, or to be as present and co-regulated as you can be?
Yeah, there's a multitude of things. And the first thing is I have to make sure I have space. Like, I know that sounds very basic, but space allows digestion. If we look at like what was the OG way to cleanse your system, there's all these diet fads out there right now, and what was the original way to cleanse? Well, it was actually fasting. So it's just not taking in anything. So not just on a diet level, but on an information level, I have to have periods of time where I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not looking at the computer. I'm literally just being with myself. And some people could call this meditation. Maybe it looks like that for you, but I have to be either walking in the forest, meditating. I have to have some chunk of time where it's just space. Like, we're so uncomfortable with space in our culture. And I feel this embedded pattern of anytime I do have space, I want to pull out my phone. I want to start looking at Instagram. I want to start checking my email. I want to start doing all those things. So I have to like be really strict with myself and be like, okay, you cannot have any of this right now. You don't even read a book or listen to a podcast or anything. You need to just like let all of the day and all of the week and all of that just like flutter in your mind and in your body until it just dissipates. And then obviously, breath work is a powerful practice. I try to at least get a somatic breath work session once a month as preventative health. Even that word to prevent is to prevent, meaning that in that somatic breathwork session, I have the opportunity to like vent out a lot of the stuff so that I don't vent on the people in my life, right? It's preventative.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's other things too, but I don't know how far you want me to go with that.
Yeah, no, there was a lot that came up there for me. One thing was just relating to what you're saying. Um, it's interesting within, like, say, the dieta tradition, with plant medicine, that I've always considered the diet not just what I'm putting into my mouth, but
Yeah.
also what I'm consuming, like giving myself
Yeah.
that space coming into those ceremonial, containers, that it's more than just the food I'm eating. It's also the media that I'm consuming and the music I'm listening
100%.
to and anything else that's getting consumed into my field.
The people that you're around is a big one.
Right. Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing that I see. And we can talk about integration, because that's an interesting concept that I really find needs to be defined and understood on a deeper level. But the people that you're around, the information that you're absorbing around those people, have the biggest effect on someone's integration more than anything. And that goes back to that empathetic witness thing. Um, but yeah, space is a big one. Expression is another one for me. Like I have to have, I need multiple outlets for my own expression, whether that's on just a physical level, like some sort of working out. Like I have to have a discharge, like where I'm pushing myself physically. Fitness is a big thing for me. Healthy competition. I love to play a lot of pickleball. That's definitely one thing for me. um, and then also other routes of expression for creativity. I'm not a big writer. I have a lot of blocks around writing. I love podcasting. I love speaking, but beyond that, I love making music. That's a way for me to express and channel a lot of stress and things that are built up inside of my system into something else. Music, playing the handpan, the guitar, music production, those sort of things, like I have to carve out just at least a little bit of time and space to do that, to have that expression, right? And if we're not finding ways to express, then we're probably suppressing or repressing, or maybe even becoming depressed, till that is getting stuck in our body as a disease. We're expression vessels, right? We have to have multiple ways. We need space to digest things, and then we have to find routes to actually channel that stress into different forms of expression.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You were talking about integration a couple minutes ago. So for you, how does integrating breath work, uh, where does that overlap with plant medicine, or is there a separate process? How does that look like for you? And I love that you brought in the people that you're around, because that does
Yeah.
have such a impact.
Yeah. First off, I think we need to kind of define what integration is, because there's a lot of different types of integration.
Yeah.
We loop that into, I think, if I were to just take a stab at what people think integration is, it's like, okay, I have this experience. How do I take the insights from that and then go live it out in my life, right? How do I move forward into the world, as this new version of myself, and sort of integrate all the insights, right? Which that would be considered like external integration for me. Like, how do I take this and live it out in the world? But before that, is having some sort of internal integration moment. And this is kind of the two buckets that I see integration from, because from a somatic perspective, the word healing and the word integration are the same thing.
Yeah.
They're the same thing. When I am doing a breathwork session, specifically a somatic breathwork session, or I'm doing a medicine journey, psychedelics, I am having an internal integration experience. And what I mean by that is I'm connecting to parts of myself that I've cut off. And maybe that's emotions that I haven't let myself feel. Maybe that's even like strengths, and maybe that's parts of my spirit, if you will, that are trying to speak to me. I'm connecting to some of the highs of my experience, and also maybe even some of the shadow aspects, the parts of myself that I've cut myself off from. So really what's happening is I'm integrating those, and I'm having this internal experience, and I'm connecting to all of those different aspects of myself. And then, that's what we would consider insights. It's really just a remembering, putting the pieces back together, reconnecting and integrating all my full spectrum being, from a spiritual to a physical and emotional, mental, all of those aspects. So that is really the core essence of healing. Once again, Gabor Mate, bless his heart. If trauma is a disconnect from the true self, then all healing is a reconnection. It's an integration. So that is this internal integration moment that people can use psychedelics for. And obviously I'll talk about the differences between that and breath work in a moment. But, with somatic breathwork or therapy or whatever it is, those are these internal integration. External, now it's like, okay, I had that internal integration. I connected to those pieces. Now, how do I live that out in the world? And the thing with external integration, there's obviously a multitude of different aspects of that. Having someone hold you accountable, having someone checking in on you, like those, and then obviously just purely taking the physical action that you need to do. But the biggest factor in external integration that I have seen is the people that you're around. And my own philosophy on that is that, and I've experienced this in my own life, is that as you start to grow, as you start to, become a better version of yourself, when you start to go down this path of healing and have these internal integrations and have these internal processes and really want to become a different person, the people that you're around, usually, if they're not doing that sort of work, they want you to be the same person you were yesterday as you're going to be tomorrow. Yeah. When somebody's nervous system is in a state of fear or stress, it craves stasis. It craves stasis more than anything. The world, there's so many things going on. And when we're in a state of fear or stress, we want things to be the same because there's so many variables. And so we look to the people around us like, okay, that person's going to be the same same person they were years ago as they are today. And so we stop letting people become that new version of themselves, and we really put them in a box in a way. And I've experienced this, and I watched other people that I've worked with experience this. They're like, I just did this breathwork session. How do I go back home and go back to my job and go back to my partnership? And really it's taking inventory on the people that you're around, and at the same time working with them in a way and letting them know like, hey, I am actually a verb. I'm a verb. I'm a process. I'm a change. And, I want you to be a verb too. Like, hopefully you're not the same person you were yesterday, the day before. Like, so are we able to be in relationships, co-regulate with people that allow us to become this new version of ourselves that support that process? And obviously that's why community is so important. It's so important. And that's another piece of like healing happens in the presence of an empathetic witness. It happens around other people. We're mammals. We need each other. And there's so many aspects where our relational dynamics, this process of co-regulation, is probably one of the most important parts in our internal integration, our healing work, and then also taking that out into the world.
Yeah, there's so much there that I feel like we could unpack. Like, that was so great.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, one of the things that came up was like a question that I often ask on this show to different people is like, why do you think that people come out of these peak experiences, whether it's medicine or breath work, and the immediate response is, this is what I should be doing with my life. Like, I need to
Yeah.
make this my job or like my identity. And from what you just shared, like that makes a lot of sense, right? Because you're finding that connection within yourself as well as a
Mm-hmm.
community that's already there that probably understands you a lot better than, say,
Mm-hmm.
going back to your office job, and you're like
Yeah.
walking into a staff meeting on Monday and they're like, so what did you do this weekend? And I'm like, I have no idea how to even begin to answer
Yeah.
that in this context. Like,
Yeah.
you
Because
know,
there's a deep innate drive within us to be, seen and heard, but beyond that, to be felt by each other. Like, I
yeah,
want to know that I'm being felt by all the people around me. That whatever's like that whatever's going on inside of me is going on inside of you, that you can feel my internal world. We could call this, like, we want to feel understood, but
yeah,
really it's this understanding of being attuned to, and co-regulated with and understood. There's a deep need. It's a nutrient that we actually need, and we can only get that from our relationships and our community to be felt. I think that the biggest wound in our culture is this wound of apathy, meaning that I'm like, nothing really matters. What I say doesn't matter. What I do doesn't matter. Nothing really matters. I'm just kind of apathetic. I'm actually not feeling. And that would be the epidemic of numbness in a way. And what I think has happened is there's this wound of co-creation. Um, Co-creation is the understanding that we are creating together. We're in relationship. We are in community. That whatever you're doing has an effect on me, and whatever I'm doing has an effect on you. And so, and there's a level of responsibility in that. But what happened, and I spent a lot of time just thinking about this, is, when you're a child, especially in today's world, just the way that life is set up, it truly takes a village. We're more isolated now than we've ever been. We're out of community.
yeah,
But say someone has a need, or as a child you have a need or express a want, and no one actually comes there to fulfill that need because mom and dad are out there trying to make ends meet. Well, then you start to feel like, oh shit, well, what I say and what I do doesn't really matter because no one's coming to begin with. And then we start to have this wound of co-creation, like, well, it looks like I just have to fit into somebody else's world, and maybe I'll just live my life from that place. And I think that expands as we get older. We're like, okay, well, when I vote, it doesn't really matter. If I try to change something in the government, it doesn't really matter. Like, I just got to fit in someone else's world, so that we become apathetic on a deep level, where truly we are co-creating. And the same disconnect that happens, from your mind to your body, because we live in a world where we become so mentally dominant, and we've forgotten the intelligence that's in our body. We've forgotten, like, that our nervous system is ancient, and it's taken thousands of years to cultivate these very intelligent processes. And we cannot bypass the nature of our being anymore. And the more we bypass nature, the more issues we'll see. But that same disconnect from mind to body is the same disconnect that we have between each other on the planet, meaning that, right now is the only time in history that I'm aware of that we can, the past 50 to 100 years, where we can see what's going on the other side of the world. Like right now in the Middle East, you can see what's going on the other side of the world. Now, every cell in your body, every biological cell in your body knows that it's intrinsically connected to all living things. It knows that if I dump toxins in the water halfway across the world, that eventually that water will make it to the water in the bodies of my children's children, that we're intrinsically connected. But we've been trained to dissociate, like, oh, that's happening over there. Nothing I can do about it over here. And so there's this disconnect that's happening. And that's that's another aspect of, and I don't know where I was fully going on it. I'm obviously passionate about this, but there's this reintegration of mind to body. There's this reintegration of me to you, and knowing that we're in a world of co-creation, that what I'm doing affects everyone else. And there's a level of responsibility and power in that, that we have to actually take responsibility for that.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I read somewhere not too long ago that like we have we take in more information in like a few hours or
Yeah.
potentially in a day than someone that lived like 200 years ago did in their entire life.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot for the nervous system to be bombarded
Yeah.
with, right?
Your nervous system's only designed to deal with your immediate reality in front of you,
Yeah.
like a couple people. It's not designed to be taking in multiple emails, text messages, phone calls, Instagram, all the different things, a million things at one time. That being said, humans are incredibly resilient, and we can develop a healthy relationship. We're trying, right? It's probably going to take a couple generations for us to find a healthy relationship in our nervous system to actually develop the skills to be able to become resilient with that. Like it's over generations that our bodies need, that we're able to develop these skills, right? These deep ingrained patterns taken thousands and thousands of years. We're
Yeah.
moving very quickly in one generation, right?
Right. Yeah, and just to kind of circle back to something that you mentioned earlier, um, I think for me that's another reason why that outer integration is so important, because the outer integration that I'm practicing helps me connect easier with that inner being that you mentioned, the moving towards wholeness, that healing and these expanded states of consciousness help us to connect with. And one of the things that I'm always mentioning to people just as a curiosity from myself is like, hey, think about the fact that in multiple ancient wisdom cultures that we still have access to in these various ways, the word for breath and spirit is the same. If we look at
Yeah.
Sanskrit, if we look at Chinese and Hebrew and Greek, those words are the same.
Yeah.
And there's something to be gleaned there, I think, from like what we're just starting to rediscover through the power of the
Yeah.
breath and these different medicines and different ways of connecting to that inner wholeness and that inner self, whatever you want to name it.
That's why I'm so fascinated with breath work. It sounds so simple. I have so many people and maybe family members that are like, oh, you're teaching people how to breathe, right? I'm like,
Right.
we don't even understand that every time we take a breath, we are respiring. Break down the etymology of that word. To respire is to respirit. Every time you respire, you breathe spirit, life force, energy back into your body so you can show up here right now as the fullest version of yourself. And you can control the electrical system, the energy system of your body based on your breath. That's the body rhythm. I got in an argument with a guy on social media that it's the main body rhythm that you do both consciously and unconsciously, meaning that it is the bridge between the things that you can control and the things that you can't control.
Right.
Meaning that you can actively change your state via your breath. You can actively dictate your internal world with your breath.
100%.
And we're not taught this in school, and it's directly under our nose, no pun intended. Um, and obviously all these ancient traditions understood that. Like they understood that these modalities are so old, right? But we can make the choice, because basically that's what it's saying. We can choose to be in a contracted state of fear and stress and defensiveness and disconnect and isolation, or we can be in a state of expansion, connectivity, love, grace, gratitude, connected. We have that choice, in that we can't always control the external world. Like, we can't control all the things that we're going through and who our parents are and the trauma that we go to, but we can control our internal state. And part of that is developing this nervous system sovereignty, which a lot of these breath practices, and coming from a somatic lens, which I look at a somatic lens as basically just honoring the innate intelligence of your being, your body. That's what somatics is. It's like, let's actually look at the innate intelligence and let's align to the natural processes of your body, versus going against it and coming from like this mental perspective, which there's power to that. But obviously within the breath work, that's the number one way to, you can utilize it in so many different ways. And just to one more point on, you asked me the question between psychedelics and breath work. Well, psychedelics have been a really powerful tool for me, and they've opened me up and they've helped me like question, because they've been illegal, right? A lot of them have been illegal. And that made me question the status quo of what's going on, because I had powerful, especially from a young age, I had powerful experiences with this, and it made me question the current education system, everything. It made me really deeply connect to myself and start to listen to that internal voice. That being said, the difference between these breathwork sessions and doing something like plant medicine is that anytime you're ingesting anything, that thing has an agenda for your system. And if it's ayahuasca, that has an agenda for your system. Now, whether that agenda is bad or good, it doesn't really matter. That agenda could be fucking ancient and really powerful, or it could be coffee or nicotine or water, right? The agenda of water is to hydrate your system. Well, when it's just breath work, there is no other thing that's taking you for the ride. There is no other agenda besides your own respiration, your own inspiration. And so anything that's coming through is coming through solely from you. It's truly empowering. And I receive a lot of insights from other psychedelics, but I would say that my biggest way of integrating those is through breath work, and my biggest way of preparing for those to become truly clear on my intention is through breath work as well. So, and it's incredibly accessible, right? A lot of people might be against trying different psychedelics, but you can have a really come to God moment and deep connection with yourself through these practices. And it can really open the door for people to be interested to take it further.
Absolutely. Like I'm just so pleased, like the fact that this is like our first long conversation, right? Like we've had a couple really short ones just to connect, and um everything that you're saying, especially in that last answer, was so aligned to the things that I believe and the things that I'm constantly, kind of talking with people about. And it's often how I describe the breathwork experience is like there's within breathwork, there's this physiological response from the way that you're breathing, but that's only one part of it. The other part of it is opening into the experience, is the surrender and like the willingness to like really like let yourself go into this space, whatever it is. And I often describe that as like that feeling of standing on a high dive, and like that like, oh, I don't want to jump, that sort of that queasiness or that like little bit of anxiety that comes up. And when we take plant medicines, there's some other force that's like pushing us off, versus breath work. We really have to be the one to really open into the experience. And it's selfishly a reason that I love working with people that have psychedelic experience, because they get that. They've had an
Yeah.
experience, at least one experience with that before. And I feel like intuitively they kind of understand, or they come to that space of surrender and openness. And they're like, oh, yeah, I know what to do here. Versus
Yeah.
sometimes when people are experiencing that surrender for the first time in their life, there can be a challenge, right? That the ego, or the whatever you want to call it, can kind of jump in and really try to get you to hang on. It's like saying,
Yeah.
no, I don't know if this is right, you know?
Yeah. You're more actively involved in breath work,
Yeah.
right? When you're, um, you know, under in a plant medicine journey, like that thing is going to force you. You have to let go. If not, it's going to be really, really painful.
Right.
In breath work, you are much more in control. Therefore, you are the one that has to take responsibility for that repatterning, or for giving yourself permission to go inward. And what's nice about that is that, like, you're in control, so you have more responsibility, but also you have the ability to titrate a little bit,
Yeah.
and a little bit at a time is okay.
Right.
I think that there is this, I call it the kitchen sink complex. That most of us, we want to throw the kitchen sink at things, and we want to like do it all right now, and this quick fix it mentality of like, give me all the spiritual insights right now, or let me get to the bottom of all my core issues right now. When nature changes slowly. You look at plants, you look at trees, it over time, little bit by little bit, that's a little bit more sustainable in the way that how life should change. If you were to make a quick change to your body, it's probably a broken bone. It's probably an injury of some sort. It's quick changes are not necessarily healthy in certain contexts. It can be, and maybe you need that like soul level intervention where you get the universal sledgehammer that just slaps you and it's painful and it redirects your whole course. But ideally, we can just slowly work towards a certain thing without needing to have that level of like smack, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I often think about that sort of cliche that people use when they're talking about plant medicine, especially ayahuasca, of like, it was like 10 years of therapy in one night. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, okay, maybe that's accurate, but could there be a reason why it takes 10 years of therapy to actually like make this change? Like, it's not that fast way isn't always the
Yeah.
best way, and then you're left with this massive, not to call it trauma, but like a lot of change really, really fast. And then how do you process that? How do you integrate that? Right.
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, obviously any modality, you look at therapy, it can be incredibly powerful, or it can absolutely be not productive and not helpful whatsoever. So 10 years of something that's not productive and not helpful, whatever, it's going to make ayahuasca feel like, yeah, 10 years of
Yeah.
therapy in one sitting, right?
Yeah. And I also like, I think what we're talking about here is really like a good endorsement for having a practice of breath work, as opposed to like a curiosity, maybe where you go like once every 6 months, or like just
Yeah.
randomly like once a year. There's something about the making it a regular practice, because not every experience needs to be that like mind-blowing peak
Mm,
experience. What are you going to do in
absolutely.
those moments where there's some blocks, there's some resistance? um, how are you going to process that, right? Like, one of my breathwork mentors calls his practice the going to the surrender gym. So it's like,
That's
it's
great.
great to have those
Love that.
peak moments, but life isn't supposed to be all peak moments,
No.
right? So how are we processing, how are we sitting with those quieter moments, those more titrated
Yeah.
experiences?
Yeah, you are what you do repeatedly, right? You're not what you do sometimes. And so, obviously, there's lots of different types of breath work out there, and they're all good for different things. Somatic breath work, the traditional sort of journey of it, is designed to be a more intense, obviously not to the level of like holotropic or some of these other ones, but it's not something you need to do every day.
Right.
But I do have quite a few different daily breathwork practices that are something that is good to do on a daily basis to, flex that choice muscle, meaning that I know how to shut my nervous system kind of, or I know how to downregulate and I know how to upregulate my nervous system, meaning that I know how to surrender, or I know, and people often don't think about the other side is that also know how to turn it on. I know how to turn on my nervous system to like become active and passionate and get all the things done that I need to get done. And then I know how to shut it off when I need to and surrender as well. So
Yeah.
there's both sides to that.
What you just shared reminds me, I just got this book, The Language of Breath by Jesse Coomer,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm really enjoying. And there's something that I read last night that just kind of reminds me of what you said. There's no breathwork technique that will make it so you're never sick again, never feel sad, or never have a bad day. Breathwork will not change your life for you, but when you learn how it works, you can enjoy a state where you can creatively and confidently take better actions. It's your actions that will lead you to a better life. This is the amazing value that a holistic approach to breathwork can offer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, there's so many different benefits, and they're all like all of the different breathwork techniques. There's a lot of dogma in the space, I will say that, right? There's a lot of like, this is the only way you should do that, and you should breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, or out through the mouth and in through the nose, or in through the ear and out through the other ear, right? It's
Right.
like there's so much, and they're all like my perspectives, they're all good for different things if you understand what it's trying to do on a physiological level, on a nervous system level. And we are full spectrum beings, and it's like, um, can we train for performance? Okay, can we train for stress relief? Can we utilize it for emotional regulation and intelligence? And can we use it for just a deeper connection to our physical body and our sensations? Can we do it for mental clarity? Right? It's all the intention behind it. And then we can, because the breath is just the driving force, it's just the pump. And it's like, what are you pumping it for? And so if you start to understand how to utilize that pump, you can utilize it for a multitude of different things.
Yeah. 100%. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Cause like you said, I'm similar to you. Like I'm doing like a deep, neurodynamic session once a month, but then I have
Mm-hmm.
daily practices, whether that's meditation or heart coherence breathing, or just
Mm-hmm.
like you said, just giving myself the space and just tapping into the natural rhythm that my breath and my body want to be in that moment, even without counting or keeping track of a certain sort of framework. Like, yeah, I want to,
Yeah.
there's some basic stuff. Like I'm always trying to breathe through my nose, as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah.
my mouth, unless I'm doing a
Exactly.
conscious, breathwork practice. But sometimes I really find the value of letting go of the rigidity of like breathe in for 5 and out for 5, and just going with like what my body wants to express and do in that moment, tapping into that natural rhythm.
Exactly. We spend enough time in our heads as it is. I utilize breath work a lot of the time to get into my body. And if I'm thinking about it, like this is, in for 5, out for 5, you know, hold my left nostril and go out this way to that way. It starts to take me out of the state that I'm trying to actually get to in the first place. So yeah, there's a multitude of different, and also everyone's different. Some people need more structure, some people need more flow, and you got to kind of figure out where you're at on that dynamic, and then probably give yourself the opposite, because that will kind of bring you a little bit more into balance.
Yeah. I love that like we've talked about breath work during this podcast, but like not the sort of mechanics of it or like these sort of basic educational sort of levels
Yeah,
of it. Like we're really getting into like a deeper kind of connection about it, which I think is really, really cool, just personally.
absolutely, man. I mean, it's interesting because, a lot of people consider me the breathwork guy, but it's not about the breath work. It's about what's behind the breath and what the breath leads to.
Yeah.
And that is so obviously, we could talk about breathing anatomy and primary and secondary respiratory muscles and all of those things, but it's what's actually happening. And, um, and like I talked about in the beginning, to me, it's more about nervous system relating. It's like, why do we do all of this work to begin with? Why regulate your nervous system? Why care about your breath work? Why do any of this sort of healing work? And to me, it's about relationships. I think that relationships are the key to life, are the primary I would say the primary of our existence is relationships. It is communion, how the quality of the connection between two or more things. It is the integration. And what I see breath work as is, first off, I need to develop the relationship to myself and reconnect my mind back to my body and reconnect back to my emotions. Where am I at right now, so that I can connect to other people, so that I can be in healthy relationships and connections to other people? Because at the end of my life, what's really going to matter is the quality. To me, I feel like, I can only speak for myself, but it's going to be the quality of the connections and the quality of relationships that I had in my life. It's not going to be the amount of stuff. It's going to be about the biggest impact I've had through relationships, whether that's on a community level, a global level, or just a one-on-one level. And that's going to require me to be in deep connection to myself, to have to be able to regulate myself, because it's not always easy. There's a lot of discomfort and stress and trauma and different things, and I need to know how to get to my core essence without all of that other stuff that's going on, that is basically muddying my experience and my connection to self, so that I can continue to connect to other people in a very clear way. But that's what I truly believe, what this work is about. It is about relationships. It is about what I talked about, this co-creation that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And the
I'm glad you mentioned the relationship to yourself, right? Cuz um like from a Tibetan Buddhist perspective, for instance, you could make the argument that the purpose of meditation is preparing for death. You know, it's
Yeah,
for being able to be present with yourself in that ultimate moment where there is no one else really.
yeah,
Possibly, you could have people around you. Um, and I also really love what you said. You kind of brought it back to something you said earlier about the being able to regulate yourself and bring yourself back into regulation, no matter what, and the importance of that, because as human beings, we're going to search for the ways to be regulated. And if we don't
mm-hmm.
have healthy ways like connecting with our nervous system, like working with the breath, we're going to start to lean on those temporary fixes or those unhealthy ways to that we found regulation in the past, even if it's in the short term, right? And I really feel like
Yeah,
that's one of the big problems that we're facing in our society right now is people looking for regulation in these really unhealthy or unsustainable ways because they've never learned how to connect with their nervous system, how to connect with their breath, how to connect with themselves in a
yeah.
grounded and present way.
Absolutely, man. I mean, um, feeling is our natural state, and it's how we were born into the world. Like we are, when we come out of the womb, we're starting to feel everything.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to emotions or physical sensation, our somatic sensation is our birthright. And we have really had a hard time with allowing ourselves to feel. We've become a culture of numbness. And basically, what we're trying to do with that is we're trying to regulate ourselves, right? Because sometimes it can be so intense to feel everything. So we're trying to basically what's going on is we're over regulating ourselves instead of allowing ourselves to become dysregulated, because becoming dysregulated is part of it. You actually have to let yourself become dysregulated. Like if I have a messy cry, or I'm some people call me an adult temper tantrum specialist, right? Like I'm creating this space for someone to have an emotional release, and that's a discharge.
Yeah.
Emotions usually take about, if on a healthy level, emotions take about 90 seconds to move through your system. And you think about most people have spent 20, 30 years, maybe their whole life, stopping themselves from feeling emotions, when if they allowed themselves to feel that emotion, it'd probably take 90 seconds and then they'd be clean and clear. And that emotion would have moved through them. Instead, they stopped themselves from feeling the emotion that would have taken 90 seconds. Their body starts to harbor it. It basically gets stored there for 20, 30, 40 years, starts to leak out in all these different ways. And then we start to utilize all these other things, such as alcohol or opiates or what is sex or food, all these things to let's keep that emotion down, when really it could be the scariest thing for somebody. But it probably would take 90 seconds for you to actually let those tears out, for actually yell at the top of your lungs, to actually let yourself feel. And feeling is equated to aliveness, right? The opposite of feeling is numbness. And Peter Levine calls this a living death. Although trauma, although people rarely die from trauma, if we don't figure out a way to work through it, then it significantly diminishes our life. And most people call this a living death, meaning that I've cut myself off from feeling the lows. Therefore, I've cut myself off from feeling the highs. Therefore, I'm left in this very flatline existence, which is a living death. A lot of people are out there with the death with your eyes open disease. They're here, but they're actually not alive because they're not feeling.
Yeah. 100%. Well, I feel very, very grateful to have had this conversation. There's always like this little barometer in the back of my head somewhere where I'm like, man, like I feel that like this conversation could go on for another hour or two. Like we could just keep vibing and connecting. And I really feel grateful when those moments happen, because it's not with everyone that I feel that way. So do you think this is a good space to transition into maybe a little practice that people could take away from?
Of course.
So that, they can embody and really experience a little bit of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I would love to, if there were certain areas of this podcast that someone wants to hear us dive back into, maybe we can schedule a time to do that as well.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, definitely message one of us. And if anything piqued your interest, because there were a lot of rabbit holes that we could have gone down, and we could have gone down those deep.
Yeah.
But this was, we covered a lot here. So one thing that I will share is just a simple daily practice. And obviously I have a lot of people ask me, like, what's the best daily breathwork practice to do? And there's not one that's the best, right? The thing that is going to make the most amount of change in your life is actually becoming aware of your breath throughout the day at all times. What's the quality of your breath when you're in an argument? What's the quality of your breath when you're working, or when you're at the grocery store? because that's a barometer of where your system's actually at, and then you can actually change it. It's not about the 15, 20 minutes that you do in the morning or evening. It's about throughout your day. What is your developing this awareness? What is your state at during those times? That being said, I will share a daily practice that I love to do in the morning. Awesome. And basically it's 2 rounds. And would you like to do it together, or would you want me to just explain it?
Yeah. Happy to.
So you can do this seated or laying down. It's up to you. It'll be 2 rounds. The first round, we are going to be kind of spiking our nervous system. It is going to be in and out through the mouth, circular connected breathing. So no pause or anything. And it's not about how fast you breathe. It's about how deep can you pull it. Can you pull it all the way down into your belly, and not just into your belly, but into your sides, into your lower back. Your diaphragm actually connects to your lumbar spine. And so it's not about just belly breathing, but it's 360 degrees. So in and out through the mouth, pulling it down as deep as you can. And I usually go for, on here, we'll do 30 breaths, but you could go for 3 minutes and 3 minutes. So that'll be the first round, in and out of the mouth. We are emphasizing spiking our nervous system. So it's probably, it can feel a little intense. Usually during that round, I am kind of bringing my awareness to things that I want to kind of clear out, what I want to like release. If it's a daily practice, I'm really like, okay, what is all the stuff that I'm carrying that I don't want to take into my day? Let's kind of spike the nervous system, allow it to kind of move through. Maybe there's a little bit of sound or a sigh on the exhale that wants to come through. Then I'll do 1 breath hold in between, and I'll guide you through that. The second half, we're going to switch to in through the nose, and then we're going to go out through the mouth. We're going to start to elongate our exhale, and we're going to start to bring our system back into a relaxed state as much as possible. So first round, we're spiking our nervous system. 1 breath hold. Second breath hold, or second round, switch to in through the nose. And we're going to start to bring our nervous system back into a relaxed state. And I'll guide you through this process.
Awesome.
So we can first find a nice, comfortable position. Definitely, sitting up nice and tall. And just start to bring your awareness to your body, to your spine. Just noticing your breath, just kind of how it is right now, without having to change it. And we'll go for 30 breaths in and out of the mouth. Let's go ahead and begin. Deep breath. That's it. Find your rhythm. Keep going. Find your own rhythm. Maybe there's a little sigh on the exhale that wants to come out. What do you want to clear out? What do you not want to take into your day? Stress, distraction, doubt, fear. Use the breath and just clear it out. And maybe shake it out if your body wants to move at all as well. And we'll go for 10 more. 3 more. Deep breath in. Hold it at the top. Maybe sip in a little bit more. Hold it. Feeling your spine nice and tall. And connecting to how you want to show up for your day. How do you want to feel? What do you want to embody? What is your antenna tuning into your nervous system? And whenever you're ready, we can let it go. And maybe you felt like you could hold it longer, but let it go. Let's go in through the nose, out through the mouth. And just start to elongate your exhale. Find your own rhythm. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Breathe in how you want to feel. What do you want others to feel from you? Breathe it in. Elongating each exhale, relaxing deeply into yourself. What do you want to embody in this world? Breathing it in. What do you stand for? Feel it in every one of your cells. And we'll go 5 more. Deep breath in through the nose. Last one, whenever you're ready. Deep breath in through the nose. And let it all go. Let it all out. And hold it out. Become empty for a moment. And whenever you need to take that first breath in, you can come back to normal breathing. A lot of the times this will send me into my meditation practice. I find that it's a lot easier to meditate after I've done a little bit of breath work, spike my nervous system, and slowly bring myself back down into that relaxed state. And that will, depending on how much time I have, I will sit in meditation for a little bit after that. But play with that. It's you can do the first half is spiking your system, and depending on your level of comfort and depending on how much you might need to, if you're going through something stressful, maybe you really need to spike your nervous system and get it out, shake it out. That's one thing that people don't really understand, is that if I'm stressed, it's not that I need to go into a relaxed state. I actually probably need to spike my nervous system and give myself that discharge so that I can come back down into a relaxed state. So play with that. If you want to do more, we have plenty of them on YouTube and all over the place.
Thank you so much, Stephen. That was great. Feel nice. So somaticbreathwork.com is where you can connect with Stephen. Where else could people go to connect with you? I know you have a pretty big Instagram presence.
Yeah, you can Somatic Release on Instagram, Jaggers JR if you want to connect with me personally. Our YouTube, we have a ton of stuff there, Somatic Breathwork, or my personal YouTube. You can check out all of our practitioner trainings on somaticbreathwork.com as well. So, yeah, basically, we're all across the board at this point.
Amazing. Well, like I mentioned before the practice, like I feel like we could take this conversation a lot deeper, a lot broader, but I'm really grateful that we got a chance to connect today. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, this was a great conversation, Jonathan. Thank you so much. And looking forward to doing this again sometime.
Yeah.
I hope you have a beautiful day, brother. Thank you.